Well, good morning, everybody. Here on Friday, I want to start off the discussion talking about temperatures because the contrast in the two air masses that are kind of colliding across the midsection of the United States right now is pretty impressive. We've got single-digit temperatures in parts of Montana, and we're still in the 80s down in southern Texas. And so that contrast here is just, you can tell what it is. We're approaching at one point between Mexico and Montana over a 90-degree swing in temperatures just in this short span of distance. Now, the main frontal boundary this morning is sitting right in through here. And we're looking at contrast across that front that ranges from about 30 to 40 degrees. And it's a pretty sharp change in temperatures, and it's going to be ushering a much deeper air mass of cold air, I think, than anticipated earlier this week. So we need to look at our temperature discussion as we begin this forecast for today. So again, this first map valid at 6:10 a.m. this morning. This is going to evolve throughout the day just to get colder and colder the farther south and east you go. And don't forget, we have another system that's going to be born right on the nose of that cold air coming out of Colorado. And that one's going to have a much deeper reservoir of colder air to pull into, and it's going to dip much farther to the south because of it, okay? So let's take a look at the most recent kind of 10-hour loop here of radar data. And I wanted to point out one thing. Okay, we watched the end of the snow kind of moving out of Montana into North Dakota now this morning into southern Manitoba and parts of Ontario. The rain shield out ahead of this brought in some widely scattered but locally heavy rainfall amounts through parts of the Midwest, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes. But early this morning, as we watched this shield of precipitation move through last night, this right here is the main frontal boundary. Can you see it dip in there? In fact, I wanted to show it to you a little bit closer because it's always fun to see these things on radar. Here's the front advancing in the overnight hours. There it is, showing up in the clear air echo on radar. It's our national mosaic, just showing you where that front is located. And the temperature contrast behind it's pretty amazing. So this is just the change in the last 24 hours at any given weather station across the country, the change in temperature. So we see that behind that front, temperatures are dropping off anywhere between 10 to almost 30 degrees in just a very short amount of time. So prepare for quite a bit of colder air to be coming in behind this. Because of that, we've got hard freeze warnings that are out for a large area here from Kansas and Nebraska through Iowa, northern Missouri, getting up into parts of Illinois and Wisconsin. There's still a winter storm warning that's left here for parts of the Red River Valley. And we're keeping an eye on this next deep trough coming into the west. It's got a lot of cold air, very windy conditions throughout California, as you can see here. And they've already started to issue the winter storm warnings for when this comes out of the Rocky Mountains. So these freeze warnings are very important to be paying attention to here. This is all throughout the Willamette Valley. We're getting here into parts of the Columbia Basin toward the Blue Mountains, and this is a extremely cold air coming in, to this particular region. That's why they've issued the freeze warnings out for those spots. Now here's the setup. Okay, we're still dealing with this Omega setup. So there it is. We've now watched two troughs come around it. We've got two more to go. The first one we need to talk about is here, and the second one is still sitting way up here. And this is the one that, just personally I'm interested in because it is coming right here toward where I live in Illinois. Before that one gets there, though, we got to watch this one spread farther to the south, come out of Colorado, deliver a much farther to the south low, and bring in the chances for snow to other folks, not just those places that saw it here over the last few days. Our southeast ridge still continues to dominate. It's kind of bothering what the forecast is for Tammy. Some of the forecast members are taking Tammy this way. Some are taking it that way. It's been a really difficult forecast to figure out where Tammy is going to go. But the reality of it is this ridge is really going to dominate the position of that trough. Now look what's behind it. Can you see over here when you look at this mid to upper level flow, it's more zonal, more west to east. We need to talk about the evolution of that pattern into week 2, and we'll do that in just a few seconds here. So I want to take you up to the 500 millibar heights. This is halfway through the thickness of the atmosphere, the density of the atmosphere. And we look where it's blued for where there's troughs or where the atmosphere is compressed and lower and colder. And where there are ridges, you see it in red. That's where it is expanded and it's warmer. So we follow these like this to see what the pattern's up to. And that's what it's doing right now. Now, again, keeping an eye on this last wave coming around the Omega setup here. So there it is. And then we got to keep an eye on this one, which is also going to sneak right along the edge of it as well. And then we're going to see what happens after that. Now, I'm just interested here selfishly, again, because I want to see where that trough that's currently sitting over the Arctic, it was yesterday over Siberia, where it ends up. Just kind of play these two features out and see where they go. So as we go through the day on Friday, getting now into Saturday, here's one here. And this is the wave. Look at that tilt on the wave. That's a positive tilt. Looks like a forward slash positive tilt, which means it's going to dig. and it's going to dig right into Colorado and parts of New Mexico and eject a system right in through here. So while we're keeping an eye on this guy making the big winter storm, we need to see what's coming behind it, which is that little wave right there. So as we play this forward, this is now getting into Sunday and into Monday. Now, our little wave ended up becoming this, and it is a reinforcing trough on the backside of this elongated trough feature in through here. So what is the story? Well, next Monday into Tuesday, this is your reinforcing shot of colder air. And what we're going to watch here is going from Monday morning into Monday afternoon and evening, and then eventually out there to Tuesday. That trough that you see right here is the combination of the one that today is sitting here and the one that's sitting here today. And they've both now come together to deliver a pretty massive shot of colder air into the eastern part of the United States. Now watch what happens after this. This is Tuesday. That's going to curl up into the east, and we're going to talk about the system that could result from that here in just a few moments, midweek next week. But what I see after this is a deeper low going over the Hudson, but it's not diving. And then I see a broad trough across the Pacific telling me that the jet's going to extend but be south. And the flow, just follow the isobars here, or iso heights is actually what they are. They're parallel across the country, and they're running, straight along a line of latitude, which means we've got zonal flow coming. And that's, to be honest, that's boring. It means there's going to be great flow into the west, run up over the mountains, give us snow in the mountains and rain in the foothills. But this is not a setup to deliver a new system in the midsection of the country. So I know about 8 weeks, I don't know how many weeks ago, I mentioned this whole week on, week off pattern. Well, this is the reset. We're in a week on now, okay, and then we're going to get a reset. The west will start to get better moisture, but the Midwest, the plains, the east, we kind of get a bit of a reset going into this first few days of the month of November, and the temperatures will probably pop back up because of that. Now, as I mentioned, I'm interested in this guy up here because I'm tracing it for my kids for Halloween, just to kind of tell them where their air is going to be coming from on that day. So this is the newest back trajectories. I did this yesterday, but I'm no longer up halfway through the atmosphere. I'm down near the surface. And what's interesting about this is that we are going to be pulling air from the Chukchi Sea and part of the Arctic right in through here. It's going to come right through the Canadian archipelago, down through central parts of Canada, and eventually end up right over here in east central Illinois and plow east as well. So this is that's the source region for some of this cold air that's coming in. All right, this map's quite important. I know we have mostly people that work in ag that watch this forecast, but I know a lot of you aren't in ag that watch it. So let's just make a quick disclaimer about this map. This is showing you where the temperatures will be below 35 degrees as forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database, which is one of our more accurate temperature forecasting systems. And remember, I use 35 because if you see a forecast of 35 degrees, the likelihood of local areas getting much below that is high. So our typical error range on temperatures can be, it can be huge, but it's acceptable to be within 3 to 4 degrees. So my point here is to say that if you have something that needs winterized, that's not been winterized, I would take advantage of now and get it done before the front gets here. Now, you've already lost your time if you were kind of west and north of this line. Secondly, if you have plants that need covered, this is your frost map, so just be careful of that. And in terms of ag, this is a pretty deep kind of penetration into the south and southeast of some really cold air. And that's a pretty sizable extent on the frost map. And I want to show you how it gets here. So we're going to use the National Digital Forecast Database, which again is only for the U.S., looking at minimum temperatures first. Here's this morning. Now watch the swing in temperatures where all this warm air still sits as it gets replaced by the much colder air from the north and west. That's Saturday morning, getting into Sunday morning, into Monday morning. Our frost line is right here, and it gets all the way down into south central Texas, and this goes out into Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning of next week, and then finally we're out here next Thursday. So you can see where we're expecting by next Thursday that colder air to come in. Now, just as we talked about, mild Pacific air begins to flood in from the west, and that's when the pattern goes zonal, like we discussed, and this is what you end up getting out of it. On the high temperature side of it, this is today's high temperatures, getting into tomorrow, going into Sunday. Look at that. Holy cow. Going into, look at this. There's there's more than a 50-degree swing in temperatures just across Texas alone. But that's Sunday going into Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and here's Thursday. So you can see the rebound. Now, why is it so warm right into this area? Well, as that flow comes in like this, you end up getting downslope flow off of the Rocky Mountains. So I know folks in Colorado love their weather, but you're going to go from winter storm warnings here today to snow coming out over the weekend into the plains. And then next week, the flow is going to come over the mountains, descend, dry down, warm up, and you're going to go back up into the mid-60s. So that's the setup we've got for the temperatures there. Looking at a little longer term, here's the 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. Here's the next 5 days. This is day 5 through 10. There's when the warmer or more mild air starts to come in while the cooler air exits south and east. And about the only adjustment we've seen on the models is kind of the extent of those mild conditions as we work out there from like the 4th through the 11th of November. It's still keeping pretty chilly air in through parts of the northern U.S., Great Lakes, and eastern Canada, and kind of still keeping things on the cooler side of average once you get onto this side. Maybe the 100th meridian and east is what we're looking at there, but more mild conditions forecast for the west. Now, quick tip of the cap to the National Weather Service. This was something they'd predicted for November. And I mentioned I thought it was going to fade. I have a new comment on that in a few minutes, but we need to see how long this lasts for the West, or if we go back into a full reset on the pattern. That's also a possibility. Okay, that's a temperature discussion. I've got a lot more I want to get to, including international weather and a long-range forecast for you. But I want to mention this. Once we get out there 10 days and beyond, what I'll be watching for is the redevelopment of a more amplified pattern. And the newest European model run takes all of that flatness and starts to drop troughs. See this? That would be when we go back into a week on again. So we start off November cold, east, mild west, boring weather across the country. And then it looks as though as we get here toward the end of the first week of November, the pattern goes back. It reinvigorates with more troughs diving in here. And I want to talk about that because I think this is going to just upset what the mid-November pattern is going to look like. We'll get to that in a few seconds. All right, how about some precipitation? This is the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation across the country. And as I look at this, I want to just show you, I think, where there was a massive overprediction and a massive underprediction. So if you remember, last time we saw that the probability of getting about 4 inches of rain was very high. Well, 2 inches of rain was high in there, and 4 inches was kind of tucked into this region. Take a look at this spot right in through here, and then east of this line. There's a big section of southeast Kansas, northeastern Oklahoma, getting into parts of Missouri and Illinois that are sitting here going, hey, you were calling for rain. Why didn't it fill in? The southeast ridge was more expansive than predicted, and it just put this buffer that pushed farther and farther in this direction. You go anywhere east of that line I just drew, and you will quickly find 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rainfall, including parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And then you can see to the north of it, pretty heavy rain as well. When we think about what the bigger effect of this has done, I want to show you a week ago what the 100 centimeter or 40 inch soil moisture looked like and compare it to now. So this was a week ago and this is now. This is the kind of improvement we need to start seeing to erase these long-standing subsurface soil moisture problems. We'll also see the Mississippi River respond in kind. It's kind of exciting to tell you that it got below, well, wait a minute. It got above, -9 feet. It's now at negative 0.899 feet. And I got asked yesterday, with all this moisture coming in, is it going to get into the river? And my answer is yes. And I think the river is expected to make a recovery. I bet it will be by the time we get into mid to, let's call it late November, that we will not only be back above low stage, but maybe up there 3, 4, 5 feet above low stage. And I have some evidence for that I want to share with you in just a few minutes. But we did get into drought monitor yesterday. Nationally, we dropped 1% in total drought area, but it did expand where that southeastern ridge influenced the weather, which was right into this particular area. Now, quick reminder, this map is made on Tuesday, released to all of us on Thursday. So it did not capture, Wednesday and Thursday's precipitation and probably most of Tuesday's as well. On the snow side of it, this map only goes through 7 o'clock last night, Central Time, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And what it shows you is just the total accumulated snowfall from the last 3 days. So I got to tip my cap to a blend of models. Remember how the European a week ago was way up here? The GFS was way down there. It actually hit right in the middle. where all that was. So it would have been smartest to use a blend of the models to kind of gather where this snow was going to be. But again, parts of the Rocky Mountains getting down to the Yellowstone, picking up some places well over 2 feet, but a broad area in through here that grabbed upwards of a foot of snow. And so good job, really good job on the models honing in on this as we move forward. Also got some good snows in the Cascades as well. All right, here's where we pick up on the precip forecast. Our front, let's get this out here, by 9 o'clock is right there. See it? And as we play this out, we're going to watch snow spread into parts of Ontario with some snow showers on the backside here, some in the parts of the Rockies, but that little pencil-thin boundary throughout the later parts of today is going to roll through right into this section of the country. And it's going to really kind of fizzle out because the southeast ridge is still in place. So the front weakens along that ridge, and it just kind of moves like this. Now, what we're watching is, remember, we've got these 2 other waves happening. The first one diving in here on Saturday. So this is 9 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. The low shows up. Look at the snow already spreading in parts of Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and South Dakota. More rain down here from Texas, Oklahoma to Arkansas. As we play this forward, this is my hope, that this rain does come through. Now, is it as heavy as what we just saw? No. But this is the last shot of it from these current systems rolling through, trying to fill in that dry spot. And what we've got is snow on the northern side of it, 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, stretching in through this corridor. We'll take a look at how much in just a few moments. And this will play from Saturday afternoon to Saturday evening. And then we play this into early Sunday morning, where the rainfall kind of stretches out into the eastern parts of the Corn Belt. Now, as we mentioned, on Saturday night into Sunday morning, we need to pay attention to the risk of some ice here. There's so much cold air diving in behind this, and still warm air getting pumped around the southeast ridge that we could get some overrunning in this area. Warm air on top of that cold air setting up the right inversion to produce surface freezing of liquid precipitation. So playing this on out, that pink represents where we're concerned about ice getting into Sunday morning. All right, so I'm going to stop this at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, and to pick it up from there, we just need to look at some of the other models. So the WPC forecast just released this morning. So this is our National Weather Service's curated product on what they think the total rainfall is going to be. They've got an area stretching from Oklahoma, clipping Kansas, but into Missouri, Arkansas, southern Illinois, right in through here, where that contour line, this outside one, represents 1.5 inches. So this would represent locally very, very heavy rainfall. We need to see if it fills in that gap. On the backside, this is all snow. And to see how it all comes out, let's take a look at the GFS versus the European, and we'll watch these 2 models together. So this is the GFS, very, very similar forecast to the WPC. This is the European model, very similar forecast as well. And we'll talk more about what's coming into the West in just a few moments. Okay, so let's compare it. The ECMWF, if it is wetter than the GFS, you get these colors. If the GFS is wetter, you get these colors. Again, the more dominant model in terms of producing more rainfall, you do see more of these colors. So the ECMWF is wetter, except right here, there's a strip in through here where the GFS is putting down more rainfall, much more focused boundary on which that rainfall is coming. All right, so how do the models stack up? I got the GFS on the left, European on the right. The current system moving east today. We've taken a look at this. The front tries to move here, but it serves as the boundary onto which the next system comes out. So this is now Saturday afternoon. We can already see the snow spreading. We see the heavier rain moving out of parts of Oklahoma into Arkansas. That is in both models. And when those pinks show up, that's where we're concerned about ice. This is 1 a.m. Sunday morning Central Time. This is 7 a.m. We're going to play through the day on Sunday, now 7 p.m., getting out there into Monday. Now remember, the coldest air that penetrates into the southeast shows up Monday into Tuesday on this high pressure cell. And I'll tell you something. See the snow in here? That is the low 10 minutes ago I was telling you about that's over the Arctic. And it's going to be spreading some light snow showers. You can see it in the models here. And this one's going to be coming in on some strong winds. See the spacing? I know it might be hard to see, but there's tight spacing of the isobars between that and the high pressure cell that's over Montana. It's in both models. That's Tuesday. Getting into Wednesday. Let's actually park it right here around trick-or-treating. Still a forecast for some snow in Iowa, Wisconsin, maybe parts of Illinois, maybe clipping Missouri, Indiana. Not so much there in the GFS, but got to keep an eye on it. That's Tuesday, Halloween, getting into Wednesday, the 1st of November. And we're going to watch how that trough, the one that started in the Arctic, meets up with the deeper low that's coming across the country and funnels its way into New England. Now, as we talked about yesterday, the GFS kicks it offshore. The European model wants to bring it upshore. And as a result of that, we're looking at, again, the risk of some snow. I do not know yet what this system is going to do. And I've seen too many different simulations that have suggested it moves out, too many that say it stays in. And should we blend again? I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on it. But as I mentioned, the week on begins first with the West while the rest of the country takes some time off. And next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we have just repeated shots of systems rolling through. Now, the models diverge in a big way when you get out there this far. This is day 9. Some models toss out systems and others don't. And what I'm about to show you is for entertainment purposes only, but it's just a comment on why the European model only runs out 10 days, but the GFS runs out 16. A lot of times when you let the models run out really far, they go into a mode that becomes, well, very high amplitude. Is it boundary conditions in the model? Is it over convection? Is it just the fact that they're trying to conserve mass and behave according to the hydrostatic balance? I don't know, but they often just do this. Are you ready? Yesterday's 12Z run of the GFS tried to produce a hurricane coming between the Yucatan and Cuba that then slams into Florida as a monster. And then watch this. Now, please remember, this was a model forecast at 300 hours. This isn't reality. But it then became a blizzard for New England by November the 9th. I'll keep an eye on this, but right now, just understand we are in model la-la land out here. But fun, just fun to watch, okay? Okay, let's put some numbers on this. Let's show you some snowfall first. This is from the European model. Let's just play this out to a 7-day total, and we'll park it right about there on day 7, 168 hours. So remember, 4 inches is in blue, so we're going to be watching this corridor in through here for some of our heavier snows, Colorado, parts of Nebraska, maybe clipping Kansas. Then you saw at the end the snow potentially coming in with that system that's over the Arctic, and this is the finisher on the current system we've got now. This is what the European model is putting down for the Northeast. It is not really there in the same fashion in the GFS. Similar forecasts here and here, not in the snowfall for parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois with the second system on Halloween, but trying to do something here as well as put down some Great Lakes snow. If we go over to the probabilities, I'm going to start off on the rainfall side of this. This is the best chance of an inch over the next 10 days or so. If we're looking for really wet conditions, probability of 2 inches. We do know that, watch the west, that when we get out there, we're expecting the west to really begin to increase as the zonal flow takes over. But let's bring this back to 10 days and just quickly show you the snowfall side of this. So winter, and we're looking, let's go to 3 inches. There's the probability of getting 3 inches in the next 10 days. I think that's a pretty solid representation of what we're watching. Certainty with this, better certainty with this, low certainty with that. Okay? From here, this is the new week 2 forecast. You see the flow returning to the west as we talked about all week. It's in all 3 models. We get a break in this section of the country. Okay? That's been a pretty consistent picture. All right, long range. Ocean temperatures. I believe the Indian Ocean dipole, which has peaked, is still our most dominant teleconnection. El Nino has underperformed. It was forecast to be much stronger than it currently is. What's really got control of the tropical pattern is the Indian Ocean. And I've said this now a dozen times. Until we get our Arctic features taking over, I'm talking about the polar vortex, I'm talking about the Bering Sea, Chukchi Sea temperature contrast, I'm talking about Northern Hemisphere snow cover, the Arctic oscillation, the North Atlantic oscillation, any of those things. Until they start to take over this winter, this is it. Your Indian Ocean dipole. Now, what does that mean? Well, let me show you something. It's peaked. That's typical. It will still continue to influence this pattern for at least another 4 to 8 weeks I think in a big way, which means the end of fall and the beginning of winter will likely be dominated by what the Indian Ocean dipole is doing. Last time it was this high in 2019. And in 2019, when it reached this high, the MJO went straight to phase 1. Okay? Went straight to phase 1. Now, why am I telling you that? Because right now, the new forecasts show subsidence here. Look at that. Right over phase 4 and 5. But at the beginning of November, very similar to 2019, the MJO went to phase 1, which sits right on top of this. Because it's in phase 1, it's also in phase 8. Because you just have sinking motion here. It's got to rise somewhere, and it rises immediately in the vicinity around it. So that's here, and that's here, okay? So I just want to be clear on why this is. So that particular configuration, I still think dominates what we're going to have, which this just tells me to tell you we're going week on, week off through November as well. So here's the end result of this. Momentum globally is trying to climb out of the basement. It's been down here in September and October, and is starting to come up. The significance of that is we could see more of these extended jet time periods. Right now it's shifted south and trying to move into an extension, which means instead of being here and going like that, it's a little bit farther south and trying to do this. That's the main idea behind this particular graphic. Now, thinking about what that might mean later, if we go into a time period where there is an El Nino and the MJO is in phase 1 for November, the pattern you're looking at here is not the pattern expected to be every day in November. You got to be very careful with these. I have to be careful with these diagrams as I explain them. It just means that we could see, better chances of having troughs coming right through where they are now. And then if there's ridging along the East Coast, these troughs have to make the turn. So what this means is the setup is just for faster flow into the west at times, troughs then diving in and running up and replacing this with colder air. This is a pattern that is open and moving. This is not a pattern where you have a ton of what we call high latitude blocking. There's no big ridges that are occupying the northern latitudes. So when I see this as a setup, it makes me fully buy into the new European model forecast, which is December through December 7th now. So this is looking at a 30-day stretch from November 7 to December 7. And what this is suggesting is that we produce a pattern with, the easiest way to say it is just better flow. And as a result, we see get that out of there. We see above average precipitation for a big section of the country and also in the west. Now, the only reason why you see drier conditions on our mountains here is that the European model is suggesting that instead of just persistent straight out of the west flow, that at times we're going to get troughs that come in here, like I said, and they run out into the country. We could probably see in the month of November, I think 2 to 3 time periods of a repeat of kind of what you just saw this past week. Will it put snow in the same spots? No, but 2 to 3 times in November, a repeat of what you just saw. And the problem here is that when the flow comes more north-south, it produces rain throughout the west, but it's hard to really pile up snow in the the Cascades of the Sierra Nevada when you don't have just direct out of the west flow. Does that make sense? That's when the mountains have their best effect. So I have bought into this, and I need to be proven wrong as I look out there this far, but I think this makes sense to me. Significance, drought recovery. That's the most significant part of this longer range forecast. Okay, from here, can I give you some international weather? I made this yesterday. The new data are not in yet for today, or for the 26th, so this is only through the 25th. So this is basically September 25th through October 25th. This is using satellite data to estimate global precipitation. And I'm going to put this live on my website very soon, once I get it kind of refined. But I want to take a look at South America. We've talked extensively about this flooding down here. But I want to tell you that I think that that the map generated from satellite data has overestimated total rainfall in Mato Grosso and Goiás. Now, I got contact with a friend of mine that I work with down in Goiás, and he did say that most of this region is doing okay. In other words, progress is good. He's not hearing from a lot of clients and customers about major widespread problems. But there has been just some folks discussing some of the recent issues. And why I'm saying this has been an overestimate of the rainfall is coming from a couple of different resources. One is him. The second is the newest data we got earlier this week from GRACE, our satellite-based soil moisture estimates. And what I saw was a reduction in this area. Now, we've talked a lot about the Amazon and its problems, but we had seen near normal soil moisture values in this area, and we're now seeing drier. Of course, there's flooding here, and we have our long-standing drought issues in parts of Argentina. But I'm concerned that this crop, if there's a best foot it could have taken to get started, even though the planting progress is fast, some of the rains are going to force, the lack of rains, forgive me, are going to force some replanting north, and we're going to see a lot of it down south where it's just been absolutely flooded out. Now we have to add that to the fact that it's been hot. For the last 14 days or 2 weeks, we've seen temperatures on average over a 2-week time span sitting about 5 degrees to 7 degrees Celsius above normal. Now that may not seem like much, but when you're averaging 14 days into this, it's quite important. And I just want to show you a tool. If you go to the USDA's website and you go to the iPad FAS home, okay, so here we are. You go to Crop Explorer. You can then choose any location you want around the world and get a whole suite of data. Let's go to Brazil. And what I want to show you is look at the tabs across the top, go to temperature, and let's go to heat, damage, and stress. Because if we slide up here and take a look, in October, the data we've got here from the Climate Prediction Center, this is from NOAA, suggests that in this area we saw at least 7 days, that's all this is showing, 7 days, where we had temperatures that got above 100 or 38°C. And in terms of heat stress, talking about over 95, again, we had a week of that. So this was just a very, very hot week. We have to be careful that when you look at this and go deep red, damage, no. That's just saying there were 7 days with temperatures that touched 100. That's all this is saying. When we look out there a bit longer, this is going over the time period of the 16th to the 22nd. We're seeing just a different number here. This comes from the WMO. Okay, so not longer, forgive me, same time period. This is from the CPC. This is from the World Meteorological Organization. And again, we're just looking at some heat stress that has been in this area. So what I want to know is, and I showed this to you earlier, if we go look at the NDVI data, and we just ask, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. NDVI, I know what it is, but I wanted to find that bookmark. There we go. We go look at that NDVI data, choose admin level 1, and we come in here to Mato Grosso. When I see these numbers down, what I want to know is at the newest update for late October, early November, do we stay in this area? Because that would just indicate some early conditional stress in this region. And then also, if I take off Mato Grosso, whoops, and we go to Argentina, I don't know, let's go to Cordoba. That will be another one to watch very carefully as well. So I think there is more stress in South America than I had alluded to, and I want to be clear on that because the planting progress has been very fast. But we're looking at drought issues, as we talked about yesterday, in Argentina. We're looking at some recent heat stress and flooding. Heat stress is north and the flooding is south. All right, where's it all going? Well, the heat stress is out because now in the day 5 through 10 time period, we got cooler air that is coming through here. But on the precipitation side of it, just have a look. While we're expecting better rains in eastern Brazil, the Amazon continues to stay very dry. Normal rains are trying to return into Mato Grosso, but our flooding problems continue here. And if there's rain in Argentina, it's spotty, but this would be critical right in through here. Can we actually produce rain in Cordoba and in Santa Fe? This is a key agricultural area down here. I will watch the trend in that all week because this 10-day forecast is what's showing it. But you can see it. It's in the 7-day as well. All right, finishing this up. The newest European longer range run went drier here. And that's significant. Kept the flooding on, went drier in northeastern Brazil. Must watch. That is a November 7 to December 7 forecast because I have felt that the European model extended has done a pretty darn good job with South America. And lastly, some international weather here. Something to think about is if you notice for the next 10 days this is drier and that's wetter, that says Indian Ocean dipole in control. Europe also very wetter. Ukraine, Russia wetter. Active systems rolling across Europe. And what's interesting is the longer range forecast released earlier this month for November, December, January keeps this drier and this wetter. I think until we get to January, the IOD will be the most dominant tropical signal, more so than El Nino. El Nino may help it at some point, but not right now. I always appreciate you guys hanging on with me on Friday. We try to cover as much as possible. So if you have some time over the weekend, you can watch it in bits and pieces. But I'm going to stop there. Tell you all to have a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you on Monday. Thank you.